Transferring data from the old phone. My old one that I got 6 years ago, that's a cable. I was back 10 minutes. Please stop. Yeah, no.
Maybe you said there was an AGS when you got there.
Huh? Who? Oh, I thought so.
Isn't that lovely?
Who's not over?
Yeah.
Does anyone know how... This is going to be on the piss. It's going to have to be.
On piss?
Yeah, because I can't get that to stay straight. Oh, oh. Oh, no, it's still not.
Do you want me to hold it?
I need it to stay like
So
that.
it's this one and that one, is
I
it?
just need... Let's get a stick and wedge it down.
So they're as tight as
So
they can go.
does this go, what's
It's gonna
this do?
wedge
Hang on. There you go.
Oh, well done.
Oh, very good.
Brilliant.
Oh, it's just where my hand went to hell, actually.
Hold on.
And it turned it.
Is Larissa coming?
I don't know. She always comes on She usually does something like she yeah.
So, I've been on 3 hours on tours like that. Just, I don't believe it. It's not just, of course it's like and so that I would be talking about it. Yeah, I'm not going to go there. You okay? Oh, it's pretty well at times. So as long as he's okay. With rules out. I think he's got the hang of it now, yeah.
Should we get cracking or should we wait?
What's the time? 12:41. I reckon we should get cracking.
See where that's pointing.
Yeah. Ready, everyone?
Hi everybody, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you for coming to this last Speaker's Corner before our bizarre hate speech laws come in. So I really appreciate everyone coming. The Australian Human Rights Commission say that they protect and promote human rights in Australia and internationally. They, quote, provide legal advice on human rights obligations to courts and appear as an amicus curiae or friend of the court to provide specialist advice in discrimination cases. So, when a middle-aged transsexual man tried to invade a female-only space, taking a woman to court for the right to do so, you'd think that the AHRC would be on the side of the woman, wouldn't you? But instead, is this still on? They are fighting on the side of this disgusting man and telling women and girls we must accept these men as women. They are advocating for the erosion of our boundaries. The Australian Human Rights Commission are advocating for the erosion of women and girls to be able to legally say to a man, get out of our space. And that's why we come here every month and speak truth and say the things that we say, outside our parliament, unashamedly, we say that men are not women and we do not want them in our spaces. How long will we be able to say these things? The Queensland government is introducing hate speech laws in a couple of weeks. Lucky us. It says that displaying certain hate symbols that cause a member of the public to feel menaced, harassed or feel offended will be a crime. The government hasn't yet defined what a hate symbol is.
It's gone off again.
Yeah, it keeps going on and on. And they refuse to tell us. Which group of people are mostly protected? Transsexuals and transvestites, gender diverse and non-binary people, otherwise known as the chronically offended.
I like that.
This will be our last chance to speak the truth in public if these hate speech laws go through. They've gone through.
They've gone through.
But they're not enacted yet.
On the 29th of April they are.
29th of April they become enacted. Thanks, Sue. More and more people are coming out and speaking, which is great. We've heard from the UK and the Cass report revealing things that we all knew a long time ago, obviously, which is the horrors of gender ideology and how it affects women and children mostly. Which feels like a turning point, but it's not over. It's not over until every woman and girl has the availability of safe, single-sex spaces, resources and sports. It's not over until the sterilisation, medicalisation and mutilation, which is a crazy sentence considering it's true. It's not over until those children are protected. It's not over until the legal acknowledgement of some men as women and vice versa is stopped. It's not over until disabled women can have the confidence in going into single-sex care. It's over when every person has a peace of mind knowing that they face no legal penalty when they correctly and accurately recognise and identify someone's sex. When we can freely say, that's a man, get out of my space. It's over when every rape victim isn't compelled to go through the absolute indignity of referring to her rapist as a she. It's over when every man who puts a baby to his useless, non-functional nipple and forces the baby to participate in his sexual fetish, and until these men are correctly identified exactly what they are, which is paedophiles, and punished for their absolute depravity. It's not over until I, a mother, can be totally confident that mine and my daughter's single-sex spaces are free from men. And it's not over until we, as Australians, can rely on the very people that we elect to put in that government to advocate for women's and children's rights. It's not over until we have someone in that space who is actually advocating for our rights. Unlike the shameful Minister for Women that we have right now, Shannon Fentiman, who believes a man can be a woman. This isn't over, and we will never forget the people who threw women and children under the bus, and we will certainly never forgive. Thank you. Anybody else?
I'll go.
Okay, it's just in relation to the hate speech laws that Leah's already touched on. I think you all know, I've mentioned it before, that I contacted the Attorney General's office 26th of October. They refused to respond to my request about what is considered hate speech, gave them examples of basically what we do, whether or not we fall into the hate speech category. So, but they refuse to answer us, and that's because they don't know what constitutes hate speech, the amendments. So it will be up to a person that feels offended to actually contact the police to start an investigation, and then they'll determine whether or not that action constitutes hate, which is absolutely ridiculous. So how can you avoid breaking the law when you don't know what that law is? So it's just crazy. And I just want to mention how grateful, and not just me but everyone, is to Sal Grover and what she's going through. Her cross-examination, they never stopped her from saying what she thought. She was very clear-headed. I mean, I wasn't there, but all the reports. And it is gobsmacking to me that a man that knows women don't want him in their space will fight so hard he'll take it to the federal court. So what's he going to do when he goes onto the app, the all-female app, knowing no one wants him there? And also, it's an all-female app, so what does that say for Sel's business? I wouldn't go on an all-female app that allowed men who identify as women onto that app. I would avoid it. So it's the business, it destroys the business model. So they can try and keep dragging us down and shutting us up, but we will never shut up, and that's a fact. We will never shut up. So yeah, so the hate speech laws start on the 29th of April. So it's going to be interesting times ahead in 2024. We don't have a J.K. Rowling to protect us, because our celebrities are too gutless to get up and support women.
Yeah.
Shame.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you to Woman Up Queensland for giving me time to speak. I come to speak here at Speaker's Corner as a citizen, compelled to speak about a grave problem in our laws. This is addressed to the political right of centre and others who would stay above this controversy, many of whom are, I think, my fellow men. So, I get it. I originally thought it too. The fight about gender identity ideology is just left-wing infighting again and between their identity groups. Don't get involved. This is just a marginal social issue, all about a fresh example of highfalutin lefty theory, which has nothing to do with the normal people. Let's just focus on the stuff of real politics. GDP growth, job creation, foreign policy. And let us men and women without gender identities just get on with our own lives quietly. But this is mistaken. This issue isn't only a women's issue, nor only an LGB issue or even a child safety issue. It is a civilizational issue. Will we be ruled by and for the interests that benefit by empowering authoritarian fantasists and wreckers? Will we let these agitators redefine the most basic words we need to discuss reality and the common good? Redefine those words in a self-serving way to hoard virtue to themselves, to make delusions the law and legitimize blasphemy laws. One little juxtaposition to understand who would presume to teach us right and wrong, truth and falsehood. 10 years ago, an American researcher found that mothers produce different kinds of milk depending on which of the two sexes their children are. Boys often get more fat or protein, while girls often get greater quantity. This was reported in our ABC and The Guardian, so it must be true. So a woman's mammary glands know the difference between the two sexes and knows which is which. Another incredible thing about a woman's body. But the most enlightened people in all history, the beneficiaries of the most well-resourced education system ever known, would tell us either there are not two sexes, but multiple, that a synthetic sex identity solely in the brain is more material to a person's life than their sex, that in any case no one can ever know a person's sex without asking first which pronouns they prefer. So these people are dumber than boobs and would censor the rest of us for being smarter than them. Further, because of these dumb beliefs, progressives say unhappy teenage boys and girls have a human right to be chemically castrated in gender clinics, interventions which are based on no good research, as the UK's Cash Review revealed again just this week. And also, because of these lies, some of the creepiest men have a human right to colonise women's single-sex spaces, services, sports and words, as the Australian Human Rights Commission actually argued in federal court just this week. So I ask of you, is it good for any of us if the people who lead our schools, our broadcasters, NGOs, departments, sports, employers' HR departments, people who would regulate what we can say in public about what we see with our own eyes, is it good if these people in power are literally dumber than boobs? Or is it good for any of us if they do not genuinely believe this, but just find it advantageous for their power to pretend to be dumber than boobs? Or would it be better not to suffer the abuse of power by this luxury belief class at all? Maybe you on the right find it uncomfortable to join a fight led by feminists who you may disagree with about other things. Well, maybe neither group can win this fight by themselves. Maybe both can offer something to each other, and disagreeing in good faith with words whose definition we agree on can ensure truth prevails. Let's disagree about those other things later, having built common ground on this issue, the inescapable reality of the physical and psychological differences between men and women, boys and girls, and that our social rules should account for that reality. But it is also a matter of record that it was feminists from the radical school who saw gender identity ideology as a serious threat to truth and justice before anyone else. Julie Bindel ignited a storm of hate against herself when she wrote about this first in 2004. And Janice Raymond foresaw this threat in embryo when she wrote The Transsexual Empire in 1979, 45 years ago. So let us have humility to concede that gender identity ideology changed from being ridiculous to alarming for us only when their campaign of dangerous falsehood expanded to target boys and girls. We had overlooked it when it only targeted women. So please, people on the political right and people, especially my fellow men, who would seek to ignore the great trans hoax, join this fight as much as you're able. Support Sal Grover's crowdfund to uphold reality in Australian law. Read the truth of what is happening at the Redux site, REDUXX. Help win this fight for the sake of all of us and our rights to live normal, quiet lives, free of a delusional, dangerous ideology.
I'm tired of hearing people, especially women, and especially those calling themselves feminists, trivialising and invalidating the sex-based rights and needs of women for female-only spaces, as if those who need and want them are not only transphobic, bigoted and unkind, but also weak, frightened and unreasonable. Like, why can't you handle a trans woman on an app? If only it were just a matter of such critics having luxury beliefs. So I turned again to women writers, grounded in the real world experience of working with women and girls who do need safe single-sex spaces. Yes, even an app where women can speak without having to cater to male sensitivities, to censor themselves, rather than feeling free to be women with women's experiences of growing up from girls to women, with no need to explain that shared reality.
To justify.
Or appease or apologise to men. I turned to women writers and workers to help me soak in the truth of womanhood again. I'm going to share some parts of the book, Defending Women's Spaces, written in last year by Karen Ingela Smith, a worker feminist in the field of men's violence against women and girls. Her dedication is for any woman who is a victim survivor of men's violence and who has ever wanted a space away from men. For any woman who has said no to men in her space or spaces for her sisters. For any woman who has been told that in wanting to be in a space without men, she is the one with the problem. Some of what I share from Karen's book really resonates with the federal court case Tickle versus Giggle. in which our Brisbane sister Sal Grover is defending her creation of a woman-only app against a complaint brought by a trans-identified male, Roxy Tickle, who claims to have been discriminated against when blocked from the app. Others may have more to say about that today. Karen says it is incorrect to claim that there is no clash between a feminism which targets sex-based oppression and gender identity ideology, or that there is no clash between women's sex-based rights and protections and some of the extensions of trans rights. We need women-only spaces, that is, single-sex spaces, particularly specialist services delivered by women, which are led by women, to women who are victim survivors of men's violence. These were developed through an incredible wave of feminist activism. And the state assumed ownership of what women created. There is a threat posed to single-sex spaces by transgender rights activism. She asks what has happened to the feminist spirit in the movement responding to men's violence against women. How has this movement reached the point where many refuse, whether through capitulation or conviction, to say that women are adult human females, that women's oppression is based on our sex, and that some of the needs of women are best met in single-sex spaces. Think about women in positions of power. Shannon Fentiman, Minister of Health and, ironically, for women in Queensland. The Sex Discrimination Commissioner, Anna Cody. The Australian Human Rights Commission. The E-Safety Commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant. These are all captured by the ideology of gender identity and have abandoned women's sex-based rights. Of course, we can't forget Julia Gillard, on whose watch sex disappeared from the Sex Discrimination Act. The importance of women-only spaces goes beyond the needs of women who have been subjected to men's violence. Physical spaces and services include hospital wards, prisons, support or counselling groups, changing rooms, toilets, women's only leisure services such as gyms or swimming pools, of training and education, or the provision of personal and medical care, sports categories, prizes, shortlists or awards for women, or particular jobs, and apps. Karen says certain aspects of what I term transgender ideology create an environment that is arguably hostile to specialist single-sex spaces for women who have been subjected to men's violence and in which women cannot set our own boundaries. And this is what I object to. Equally, to dismiss the perspective of female victim survivors as underpinned by misandry or irrational fear is to deny their clarity of vision, which has come from hard-won insight. While to class legitimate protections they ask for as transphobic oppression totally misrepresents reality. Who can forget, and this is me, not Karen, who can forget Shannon Fentiman's introduction of the Gender Self-ID Bill to Parliament, in which she discredited and rendered valueless the sincere expression of concern voiced by women at the loss of single-sex spaces, telling Parliament that our concern was no more than a cloak for transphobia. Yeah. This misrepresentation of women's genuine concern was not only a lie, but could be seen as hate speech against us, biasing discussion on this against us. A note on language. Karen says, I don't use terms like cis, cisgender and ciswoman, since in my view, this prefix suggests that adult human females, women, are a subsection of their own category. I will not uphold this perspective, nor use such terms. If we accept the concept of cis women, we're accepting that the class of women can be mixed sex. Being male, in combination with the effects of socialisation, the process in which a male infant becomes an adult man, means that biology does play an undeniable role in the nature of men's violence. Another undeniable fact is that males who transition share the biology of those who do not, and it is impossible to meaningfully alter the consequences of that biology. She says, I focus on males who believe or say they believe they have transitioned to being a woman or trans women. I focus on this group because it is almost always males who are seeking to breach boundaries set up to protect women. So females who transition are not a meaningful focus in this context. From my perspective, I would not seek to exclude them from women-only spaces and recognise that they are harmed by gendered stereotypes, as are all women. Sal Grover also explained that she did not exclude trans-identified women from her rap because they remain women. Karen says transgender people should be accepted as they are, but not as the sex that they are not. Problems arise when the consequences of transition, in inverted commas, are imposed on other people, women on the whole. The true trans fallacy is used when people attempt to defend a claim by excluding any examples that do not fit the picture they are trying to create. So males with transgender identities who exist at the extreme end of the scale of exploitative, abusive or violent males are written off by trans activists as not really trans. This fallacy is a linguistic tool that functions to maintain boundaries and construct unchallengeable arguments. It is not transphobic to believe that people cannot change their sex, that women's oppression is based on our sex, that gender is a hierarchy. Sex is the axis of sex-based oppression, and gender is the biggest tool in the box. I do not argue that all biological males, whether or not they have trans identities, are predators and abusers. The best data we currently have is on transgender males and their rates of committing violent crime is an academically rigorous study from Sweden in 2011. It found that criminal behaviours of those who had legally and medically transitioned from men to trans women followed the pattern of male pattern violence. And those who transitioned from women to trans men continued with female pattern of offending. Males who had transitioned here were 18 times more likely to be convicted of violent crime than females. Imagine violent, sexually offending males embracing the feeling of being a woman at the point of sentencing in order to enter female prison, where they rape and terrorise already traumatised women who cannot escape and are not considered important enough to be listened to, especially when prison guards have been instructed that they would be considered transphobic for noticing or listening to transphobic prisoners. We don't have to imagine this, as it is happening around the world already. The study's findings were confirmed after careful analysis by policy analysts, and they confirmed that birth sex matters. We know that these men's offences are now recorded as women's crimes because gender identity trumps sex. The crime statistics now lie about male and female crime. Sex is the biological group into which we are born and in which we remain. Men's violence against women and girls is both a cause and a consequence of sex inequality, and gender is one of the critical ways in which men's violence is created, normalised and frequently excused. Sex still matters. It is hubris to act as if we exist in a post-sex society, and doing so means women lose out. The best trick patriarchy ever played is convincing people that sex does not exist. But feminists recognise patriarchy and highlight sex inequality and its profound damages. Again, Sal Grover's case in the federal court is a very significant example of how much sex matters in law and how removing it from the Sex Discrimination Act in favour of gender identity has been profoundly damaging. Good men stay out. And a majority of men are good men, so only the bad ones want to enter our spaces.
Women stay out, bad men stand out. Who's speaking next?
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. I just want to read out a tweet or a post that I saw on Twitter this morning, or X. It's from a lady called Belle Staffy. She describes herself a gender-critical lesbian. So I'm just going to read it out as directly from her post. Thanks to Ruth Hunt, Stonewall UK, et al., I underwent a 5-year campaign of hatred against me and my property from my community in Todmorden because I am a genuine gender-critical lesbian. These were, in inverted commas, queer, middle-class white heterosexuals. I was banned from the Golden Line and all venues where trans people were because I was transphobic. I was even banned from the Todmorden Women's Disco for complaining about men claiming to be trans lesbians being welcomed in after being staunchly all female for the previous 30 years. My vehicles were attacked, my windows smashed, I was shunned, and I had graffiti scrawled around the town about me. I was stalked and attacked by a man in Manchester because of the hatred Ruth Hunt whipped up against lesbians. He threw 2 bottles of milkshake at me. We thought it was acid. With victim support's help, I was rehoused and I'm still in hiding from trans rights activists. That's why I went very quiet for a while. The homophobia she unleashed against lesbians has damaged us beyond repair, I feel. I've told my new neighbours that my husband is in jail and may get his parole soon. In brackets, silence. Then I just changed the subject. You may laugh, but I'm a survivor. I didn't expect to have to lie about my sexual orientation for safety reasons in UK 2024 at my age. That's the damage Ruth Hunt and Stonewall UK have done to this generation, to this genuine lesbian. And she finishes off by saying, so F you very much, Ruth Hunt. And I echo that 100%. There is a special place in hell, if there is such a place, for these so-called lesbians that throw their fellow lesbians under the bus to dick pander to these men who call themselves lesbians. Anyway, I think that's it. Thank you for listening.
Do we have anyone else?
It won't unlock. Thank you to Women Up Queensland for giving me time to speak again. This is addressed to those on the political left. Start thinking of an excuse for why you support sterilising boys and girls. Start thinking of a reason why you were convinced to believe in the existence of gender identities, the evidence for which is as good as that for wind turbine syndrome and for sunspots causing climate change. Start thinking of a reason why you were convinced by such an obviously internally inconsistent ideology. An ideology that says that grown men don't have to change anything about their bodies to be women, but that teenage girls must have their female puberty blocked and then deformed by taking the male hormone. That says that while identifying as another race would be racist, a man changing the way he dresses from stereotypically male to dressing like the women he finds attractive is not sexist. This ideology is the antithesis of everything you say you stand for. Any truth you say about anything else can be contrasted with these obvious lies. These lies refute your consistency, your goodwill, your openness to evidence and reason, your respect for your fellow citizens. And any public universal program will lose support if enabling these lies is part of the program's price. You say you support women's rights not to suffer men's violence, and during the Me Too moment, you repeatedly said, believe women. But at the same time, you say a man should be able to use women's shelters because he says he is feminine in his brain. You on the left campaigned for years for homosexuals to access the marriage right, and your campaign succeeded wildly. But when, last year, the Australian Human Rights Commission told a group of lesbians they could not have a female-only function on International Lesbian Day at the Victorian Pride Centre, where were you? You were on the side of the straight men in lipstick who wanted to go lech on the lesbians. In 2013, I campaigned with you to defend the carbon price. We were all disgusted at Tony Abbott and Rupert Murdoch's campaign of wild exaggerations, cynical oversimplifications, baseless fear-mongering, and glib, manipulative slogans. But now you use these same tactics to put women and children in harm's way. Progressives also often like to condescend to America's lower classes about how they get duped by the Republican Party hyperventilating about patriotism, family values, and the Second Amendment, duped to support neoliberal policies that harm them, their families, and communities. But you yourselves are now exposed as easily manipulable by the adjectives you want your class peers to know you by. For that reward, progressives have promoted one of the greatest medical scandals in history, a postmodern lobotomy and thalidomide, a post-truth Tuskegee experiment. In the future, today's progressives will be recorded as the most devious of misogynists and homophobes. The ways in which you condemn us will be shown to be projections. So to save yourself, start thinking of an excuse why you support sterilising boys and girls.
I just want to read out a comment, if I can find it. There's a page on Facebook that is gender critical, and they posted this. They got a direct message through, and it says, "Your page is absolutely disgusting and your hateful generation will soon die out. The new generation will simply undo all of your vile work. 2024 has no place for transphobes. You are cis, deal with it. Trans lives matter." This is the Be Kind Brigade. They're so loving and kind and generous, and all they do is send out hateful, misogynistic, vile messages to anyone that even questions the ideology. So, anyway, I've said enough for today. Where is... Oh, Kaylee, are you speaking? Any other speakers? No? Okay, well, we'll wrap it up for today.
Just in response to that, this is the new generation. This is the new generation. There are millions of women who are going to be bringing up their kids not to believe in this. So saying that this generation is going to die out is just wishful thinking. We're never going to stop speaking. We're never going to stop gathering to speak truth. And we're never going to lie to our children about what biological sex means.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone.
I knew he'd come in handy. Finally. Thanks, Haley.
Yeah, I know. He's
I found that out, but I didn't have enough last time.